Thomas Bennett was a successful businessman, known for his acumen and sharp mind. He had built a thriving company from the ground up, enjoying the fruits of his labor with his beautiful wife, Catherine. Their lives seemed perfect, with lavish parties, elegant vacations, and a home that resembled a page out of an interior design magazine. But beneath this glittering facade, cracks were beginning to form. Catherine had always been the picture of grace and sophistication, a woman who turned heads wherever she went. Her charm and beauty were matched only by her intelligence, and she played the role of the devoted wife flawlessly. Yet, recently, Thomas had noticed a change in her. She seemed distant, often lost in her thoughts, and her laughter no longer reached her eyes. One evening, after a particularly grueling day at the office, Thomas returned home to find Catherine in the garden, staring at the stars. He approached her, hoping to bridge the growing gap between them. "Catherine, you've been so quiet lately. Is everything all right?" Thomas asked gently. She turned to him, her eyes shimmering with unshed tears. "I'm fine, Thomas. Just tired, I suppose," she replied, forcing a smile. Thomas took her hand, trying to connect with her. "You know you can talk to me about anything, right?" Catherine looked away, her grip tightening on his hand. "I know. I just need some time to myself. It's nothing to worry about." But Thomas couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to her melancholy. As the days turned into weeks, he found himself growing increasingly anxious. Catherine's late-night outings and mysterious phone calls only fueled his suspicions. One night, unable to sleep, Thomas decided to go through Catherine's phone, something he had never done before. As he scrolled through her messages, his heart sank. There were numerous messages from a man named Richard, filled with intimate conversations and plans to meet. Thomas felt a cold wave of betrayal wash over him. His hands trembled as he confronted Catherine the next morning. "Who is Richard?" Thomas demanded, holding up her phone. Catherine's face turned pale, and she took a step back. "Thomas, I can explain." "Explain what? That you've been lying to me? Cheating on me?" Thomas's voice broke with emotion. "I didn't mean for it to happen," Catherine said, tears streaming down her face. "It started as a friendship, and then it just happened." Thomas felt his world collapsing around him. "How long?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. 6 months, Catherine admitted, her voice trembling. "I'm so sorry, Thomas. I never wanted to hurt you." The weight of her words hung in the air, suffocating him. Thomas turned away, unable to look at her. "I can't do this," he said. "I need some time to think." He left the house, the walls that had once been his sanctuary now closing in on him. As he drove aimlessly through the city, Thomas felt a mix of anger, sadness, and confusion. How could the woman he loved, the woman he had shared his life with, betray him like this? Thomas spent the night in a hotel, the enormity of Catherine's betrayal sinking in. He knew their marriage could never be the same, and the thought of trying to repair the damage seemed impossible. The next morning, he made a decision that would change their lives forever. When he returned home, he found Catherine waiting for him in the living room, her eyes red from crying. "Thomas, please, let's talk about this," she pleaded. Thomas shook his head, his resolve hardening. "There's nothing to talk about, Catherine. You made your choice. I'm filing for divorce." Catherine's face crumpled, and she sank to the floor, sobbing. But Thomas felt no sympathy. The woman he had loved was gone, replaced by a stranger who had shattered his heart. As Thomas began the painful process of untangling their lives, he focused on his work, pouring himself into his business to numb the pain. The once perfect facade of their marriage had crumbled, leaving behind only memories and regrets. In the months that followed, Thomas moved out of their home and into a sleek, modern apartment in the city. He threw himself into his work, building his company into an even greater success. But despite his professional achievements, the emptiness in his heart remained. Thomas saw Catherine occasionally as they finalized the details of their divorce. Each meeting was a painful reminder of what they had lost. Yet, through it all, Thomas maintained his composure, determined not to let his emotions get the best of him. The finalization of their divorce was both a relief and a heartbreak. Thomas knew he had made the right decision, but the pain of losing the woman he had once loved was still raw. As he signed the last of the papers, he felt a sense of finality, a chapter of his life closing forever. As the years passed, Thomas rebuilt his life. He found solace in new friendships and the occasional romance, but he never allowed himself to become too attached. The scars of Catherine's betrayal ran deep, and he guarded his heart fiercely, Yet despite the pain and the heartache, Thomas emerged stronger. He had faced the worst and come out the other side, a testament to his resilience and determination. The perfect facade of his marriage had been shattered, but in its place, he found a new strength, a new sense of purpose. In the end, Thomas realized that life was not about perfection, but about facing challenges head-on and emerging stronger. He had lost the woman he loved, but he had found himself, and that was a victory worth celebrating. The weeks following the confrontation with Catherine were a blur for Thomas. He threw himself into his work, attending meetings, closing deals, and expanding his business empire. The office became his refuge, a place where he could drown out the noise of his personal life and focus on something he could control. Yet, even amidst the success, he felt the weight of betrayal pressing down on him. Catherine moved out of their home and into a small apartment on the other side of the city. She reached out to Thomas multiple times, pleading for a chance to explain, but he couldn't bring himself to listen. The pain was too raw, and the anger too consuming. He needed time and space to process what had happened. One evening, as Thomas was leaving the office, his friend and business partner David stopped him. "Thomas, wait up. Let's grab a drink. You look like you could use one." Thomas nodded, grateful for the distraction. They headed to a nearby bar, settling into a quiet corner. David ordered their usual drinks, and they sat in silence for a moment, the noise of the bar buzzing around them. "So, how are you holding up?" David asked, breaking the silence. Thomas sighed, taking a long sip of his whiskey. "I'm surviving, just trying to keep busy." David nodded sympathetically. "I heard about Catherine. I'm really sorry, man. I can't imagine what you're going through." "It's been rough," Thomas admitted. "I just don't understand how she could do this to us. To me." "People do strange things when they're unhappy," David said gently. "Maybe she felt something was missing." Thomas bristled at the suggestion. "We had everything, David. A beautiful home, a successful business, a good life. What more could she want?" David shrugged. "Sometimes it's not about what you have, but how you feel. Maybe she felt neglected or unappreciated." Thomas shook his head, frustration bubbling up inside him. "I gave her everything. She never once said she was unhappy." "Did you ever ask?" David countered softly. The question hung in the air, and Thomas realized with a pang of guilt that he hadn't. He had assumed everything was fine, that their life was perfect. But maybe he had been too focused on his work, too wrapped up in his own world to notice Catherine's growing discontent. "I guess I didn't," Thomas admitted, his voice heavy with regret. "But that doesn't excuse what she did." "No, it doesn't," David agreed. "But understanding why might help you move on." Thomas nodded, deep in thought. Maybe David was right. Maybe understanding Catherine's reasons could help him find some closure. But it was a painful path to tread, and he wasn't sure he was ready to face it. Over the next few days, Thomas found himself replaying David's words in his mind. He knew he needed answers, but confronting Catherine felt like opening a wound that had barely begun to heal. Yet the questions gnawed at him, and he couldn't shake the feeling that he needed to know the truth. Finally, one evening, he picked up the phone and called Catherine. She answered on the first ring, her voice tentative and filled with hope. "Thomas?" "Catherine, we need to talk," he said, his tone firm. "Can you meet me tomorrow at the cafe near the park?" "Of course," she replied quickly. "I'll be there." The next day, Thomas arrived at the cafe early, his mind racing with thoughts of what he would say. When Catherine walked in, looking fragile and nervous, his heart ached at the sight of her. She had always been so strong and confident, but now she seemed like a shadow of her former self. "Thank you for meeting me," Catherine said softly as she sat down. Thomas nodded, trying to keep his emotions in check. "I need to understand, Catherine. Why did you do it?" Catherine looked down, her eyes filling with tears. "I don't know where to start," she whispered. "Start from the beginning," Thomas said, his voice gentle but insistent. "I need to know everything." Catherine took a deep breath, gathering her thoughts. "It wasn't just one thing, Thomas. It was a lot of little things that built up over time. I felt lonely, disconnected. You were always so busy with work, and I felt like I was losing you." Thomas felt a pang of guilt but pushed it aside. "Why didn't you tell me?" "I tried," Catherine said, her voice breaking. "But you were always so focused on your business. I didn't want to burden you with my feelings. And then I met Richard. He listened to me, made me feel valued and appreciated." So you cheated because you felt neglected? Thomas asked, his voice tinged with bitterness. It's not that simple, Catherine said, her eyes pleading for understanding. I know what I did was wrong, and I'm so sorry for hurting you. I never meant for it to happen, but I was in a bad place and I made a terrible mistake. Thomas looked at her, his emotions swirling inside him. He wanted to be angry, to blame her for everything, but he couldn't deny that he had played a part in their unraveling. I don't know if I can forgive you, he said honestly, but I needed to hear the truth. Catherine nodded, tears streaming down her face. I understand. And I'm truly sorry, Thomas. I hope one day you can find it in your heart to forgive me. Thomas stood up, feeling a strange sense of relief mixed with sadness. Goodbye, Catherine, he said softly. Take care of yourself. As he walked away, Thomas felt a weight lift off his shoulders. The pain was still there, but he had taken the first step toward healing. He knew it would be a long and difficult journey, but he was determined to find his way back to happiness. In the following weeks, Thomas focused on rebuilding his life. He spent more time with friends, rekindled old hobbies, and even started dating again. It wasn't easy, but he was slowly rediscovering the parts of himself that had been buried under the weight of his marriage. One evening, as he sat on the balcony of his apartment watching the city lights twinkle below, he felt a sense of peace. The road ahead was still uncertain, but for the first time in a long while, he felt hopeful. He had faced the betrayal, confronted the pain, and was beginning to heal. Thomas knew he would always carry the scars of his past, but they no longer defined him. He was ready to embrace the future, whatever it held, with an open heart and a resilient spirit. And as he looked out at the city, he smiled, knowing that he had the strength to face whatever came next. In the aftermath of their meeting, Thomas found himself reflecting deeply on his conversation with Catherine. It wasn't an easy process. Understanding the layers of betrayal and the reasons behind it felt like unraveling a tightly wound ball of thread. He began to see that relationships, much like business ventures, required constant attention and effort. Neglecting any part could lead to unexpected and often painful outcomes. Thomas decided that moving forward required more than just understanding the past. It involved actively rebuilding his sense of self and creating a life that wasn't defined by Catherine's betrayal. He made a list of things he wanted to accomplish, focusing on personal growth and fulfillment. Each item on the list was a step towards reclaiming his happiness. One of the first steps Thomas took was to engage in therapy. He found a therapist who specialized in dealing with betrayal and relationship trauma. In their sessions, Thomas explored his feelings of anger, sadness, and betrayal. The therapist guided him through exercises that helped him articulate his emotions and understand their origins. For instance, they discussed how his intense focus on work had not only distanced him from Catherine, but also from his own emotional needs. Thomas's therapist encouraged him to delve into activities that brought him joy and satisfaction outside of his professional life. He reconnected with old friends, those relationships he had neglected over the years. Socializing with them brought a sense of normalcy and reminded him of who he was before his marriage consumed his identity. They went hiking, attended concerts, and even tried new restaurants in the city. These outings were more than just distractions. They were vital steps in re-establishing his social and emotional well-being. Moreover, Thomas took up new hobbies that piqued his interest. He started attending a cooking class, something he had always wanted to do but never found the time for. Learning to cook not only provided a creative outlet, but also a therapeutic one. The process of chopping vegetables, measuring ingredients, and perfecting recipes became a form of meditation, helping him focus on the present moment and providing a sense of accomplishment. One of the most significant steps Thomas took was volunteering. He joined a local nonprofit organization that supported homeless veterans, dedicating his weekends to helping those in need. This experience was profoundly humbling and rewarding. Interacting with individuals who had faced far greater adversities than his own provided Thomas with perspective. Their resilience and courage inspired him, and in helping them, he found a renewed sense of purpose. During this period, Thomas also began to focus more on his physical health. He joined a gym and hired a personal trainer to create a fitness routine tailored to his needs. The rigorous workouts were not just about building muscle or losing weight, they were about rebuilding his confidence and regaining control over his body and mind. Each session was a reminder of his strength and determination. As Thomas continued to rebuild his life, he found solace in writing. He started journaling daily, capturing his thoughts, fears, and aspirations. This practice allowed him to process his emotions and track his progress. Writing became a powerful tool for self-reflection and healing. He often found that putting his thoughts on paper helped clarify his feelings and provided a sense of release. In the midst of this personal renaissance, Thomas received an unexpected invitation. It was from an old college friend, Mark, who was hosting a reunion party. Thomas was hesitant at first, unsure if he was ready to face people from his past. But after some encouragement from his therapist and friends, he decided to go. The reunion was held at a beautiful vineyard just outside the city. As Thomas arrived, he felt a mix of nervousness and excitement. He hadn't seen many of these friends in years, and he wondered how they would react to his story. But as he walked through the doors, he was greeted with warmth and genuine happiness. "Thomas, it's been too long," Mark exclaimed, giving him a bear hug. "We've missed you, man. How have you been?" Thomas smiled, feeling a sense of belonging that he hadn't felt in a long time. "It's good to be here, Mark. Life's been a roller coaster, but I'm hanging in there." As the evening progressed, Thomas reconnected with old friends, sharing stories and reminiscing about their college days. It was a night filled with laughter, good wine, and heartfelt conversations. He realized that despite the distance and time, these friends still cared deeply for him. Their support and encouragement were invaluable. It was during this reunion that Thomas met Emma. She was an old friend of Mark's, someone he had never met before. Emma was a writer and a free spirit, with a contagious zest for life. They struck up a conversation, and Thomas found himself captivated by her intelligence and wit. Emma had a way of seeing the world that was both refreshing and inspiring. They spent the evening talking, sharing their experiences and dreams. Thomas felt an instant connection with her, something he hadn't felt in a long time. As the night came to an end, they exchanged contact information, promising to keep in touch. In the weeks that followed, Thomas and Emma began to see each other more frequently. They explored the city together, went on hiking trips, and enjoyed long conversations over coffee. Emma's presence in Thomas's life was like a breath of fresh air. She brought out a side of him that he had almost forgotten, the side that was adventurous, curious, and full of life. Emma's encouragement and support helped Thomas in his healing journey. She introduced him to new perspectives and inspired him to embrace the future with hope and optimism. Their relationship blossomed slowly, built on mutual respect and understanding. Emma knew about Thomas's past, and she respected his need to take things at his own pace. One evening, as they walked along the waterfront, Emma turned to Thomas, her eyes reflecting the twinkling city lights. "You know, Thomas, life has a funny way of surprising us. Sometimes the things we think will break us end up making us stronger." Thomas nodded, feeling the truth of her words. "You're right, Emma. I never thought I could move on from what happened with Catherine, but meeting you has shown me that there's still so much to look forward to." Emma smiled, squeezing his hand. "And I'm glad we found each other. Here's to new beginnings." As they stood there, watching the waves gently lap against the shore, Thomas felt a profound sense of gratitude. The journey had been difficult, filled with pain and heartache, but it had also led him to a place of newfound strength and hope. He had faced his past, embraced his present, and was ready to step into the future with an open heart. Thomas knew that life would always have its challenges, but he also knew that he had the resilience to overcome them. With Emma by his side and a renewed sense of purpose, he felt ready to face whatever came next. And as they walked back towards the city, hand in hand, Thomas couldn't help but smile, knowing that the best was yet to come. As Thomas and Emma's relationship blossomed, Thomas continued to rebuild his life. He was thriving professionally, his business expanding into new markets and reaching unprecedented heights. Personally, he was happier than he had been in years, finding joy in the simple moments he shared with Emma. However, despite this newfound happiness, there were still unresolved issues from his past that lingered like shadows. One evening, while Thomas and Emma were having dinner at a cozy Italian restaurant, his phone buzzed with a text message. He glanced at it and felt a pang of anxiety. It was from Catherine. "Thomas, we need to talk. It's important. Please call me." Emma noticed the change in his demeanor. "Everything okay?" she asked, concern evident in her voice. "It's from Catherine," Thomas said, sighing. "She wants to talk. I'm not sure what it's about, but it sounds urgent." Emma reached across the table and took his hand. Whatever it is, you can handle it. Do you want to call her now? Thomas nodded. I think I should. He stepped outside the restaurant and dialed Catherine's number. She answered almost immediately. Thomas, thank you for calling. I'm sorry to bother you, but I didn't know who else to turn to. Catherine's voice was shaky, filled with a mix of fear and desperation. What's going on, Catherine? Thomas asked, trying to keep his tone neutral. It's Richard, she said, her voice breaking. He's been harassing me, threatening to expose our affair to everyone. I'm scared, Thomas. I don't know what to do. Thomas felt a surge of anger. Why didn't you deal with this earlier? Why drag me into it now? I know I made mistakes, Thomas, Catherine pleaded, but I need your help. Please, just hear me out. Thomas took a deep breath, trying to calm himself. All right, tell me everything. Catherine explained how Richard had become increasingly possessive and threatening after their affair ended. He had been sending her menacing messages and showing up unannounced at her apartment. She feared for her safety and didn't know where else to turn. Thomas, I know I have no right to ask for your help, but I'm desperate. Please, can you help me? Catherine's voice was filled with genuine fear and regret. Thomas felt conflicted. Part of him wanted to turn his back on her, to let her deal with the consequences of her actions. But another part, the part that still cared about her as a person, couldn't ignore her plea for help. All right, Catherine, he said finally. I'll help you, but this is the last time. After this, we're done. Thank you, Thomas. I don't know how to repay you, she said, relief evident in her voice. We'll figure it out, Thomas replied. Meet me tomorrow at my office. We'll go to the police and file a report against Richard. He needs to be held accountable. As Thomas returned to the restaurant, he felt a heavy burden lift off his shoulders. He had made a decision, and now he needed to follow through with it. Emma looked up as he sat back down, her eyes filled with understanding. Everything okay? She asked. Not really, Thomas admitted, but I'm handling it. Catherine's in trouble, and she needs my help. Emma nodded, squeezing his hand. I understand. Do what you need to do. I'm here for you. The next day, Thomas met Catherine at his office. She looked exhausted, her eyes puffy from crying. They drove to the police station together, and Thomas helped her file a restraining order against Richard. The officers took her case seriously, promising to investigate the matter and ensure her safety. After they left the station, Catherine turned to Thomas, her eyes filled with gratitude. Thank you, Thomas. I don't deserve your help, but I'm so grateful for it. Just take care of yourself, Catherine, Thomas replied, and stay away from Richard. If he contacts you again, call the police immediately. I will, she promised. I'm trying to move on, to rebuild my life. This was a wake-up call for me. Thomas nodded, feeling a sense of closure. He had done what he could to help her, and now it was time to move forward. As he drove back to his office, he felt a renewed sense of purpose. He had faced the shadows of his past, and now he could fully embrace his future. That evening, Thomas shared everything with Emma. She listened patiently, her eyes filled with empathy and support. You did the right thing, Thomas, she said softly. Helping her was the right thing to do. I hope so, Thomas replied. I just want to put all of this behind me and focus on our future. Emma smiled, her eyes sparkling with affection. And we will. Together. Over the next few months, Thomas and Emma grew even closer. They traveled together, exploring new places and creating beautiful memories. Thomas found himself falling deeply in love with her, cherishing every moment they spent together. One evening, as they watched the sunset from their favorite spot on the waterfront, Thomas took Emma's hand and looked into her eyes. Emma, you've brought so much joy and love into my life, he said, his voice filled with emotion. I never thought I could feel this way again, but you've shown me that it's possible. Emma smiled, tears welling up in her eyes. I feel the same way, Thomas. You've made me so happy. Thomas reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. Emma, I want to spend the rest of my life with you. Will you marry me? Emma gasped, her eyes wide with surprise and joy. Yes, Thomas, yes, I will marry you. Thomas slipped the ring onto her finger and they embraced, tears of happiness streaming down their faces. In that moment, Thomas felt a profound sense of peace and fulfillment. He had faced the pain of his past, embraced the love of his present, and now he was ready to build a beautiful future with Emma. Their wedding was a small, intimate affair, attended by close friends and family. As they exchanged vows, Thomas felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude. He had found love again, and he was determined to cherish it every day. As they danced under the stars, Thomas whispered into Emma's ear, "Thank you for giving me a second chance at happiness." Emma smiled, resting her head on his shoulder. "Thank you for believing in us." Together, they embarked on a new journey, filled with love, hope, and endless possibilities. Thomas knew that life would always have its challenges, but with Emma by his side, he felt ready to face anything. In the end, the betrayal that had once shattered his world became a distant memory, a chapter that led him to a place of true happiness and fulfillment. And as they looked towards the future, Thomas and Emma knew that their love would only grow stronger, guiding them through whatever lay ahead. The years that followed were marked by profound growth and unending love. Thomas and Emma thrived together, their bond growing deeper with each passing day. Their shared adventures, mutual support, and unwavering respect for each other became the bedrock of their relationship. Thomas felt a sense of fulfillment he had never known before, not even in the early days with Catherine. Their business ventures also flourished. Emma, with her sharp mind and creative ideas, joined Thomas in expanding his company. Together, they explored new markets, launched innovative products, and built a reputation for excellence and integrity. Their partnership, both personal and professional, was a testament to their mutual respect and shared vision. One sunny afternoon, as Thomas and Emma were working in their home office, Emma received a phone call that would change their lives forever. It was from an adoption agency they had contacted months earlier. Thomas watched as Emma's face lit up with joy, her eyes brimming with tears of happiness. "Thomas," she whispered, her voice trembling, "they found a child for us. We're going to be parents." Thomas felt his heart swell with emotion. He had always wanted children, and the idea of starting a family with Emma filled him with an overwhelming sense of joy and anticipation. They quickly arranged to meet with the agency and began the process of bringing their child home. A few months later, Thomas and Emma stood at the airport, anxiously awaiting the arrival of their daughter, Maya. When the social worker finally brought her out, Thomas felt an instant connection. Maya was a bright-eyed, curious toddler with a smile that could light up a room. As he held her for the first time, Thomas knew that his life had been leading to this moment. "Welcome home, Maya," Thomas whispered, his voice choked with emotion. Emma stood beside him, her eyes filled with tears of joy. "We're so happy you're here, sweetheart." The transition into parenthood was both challenging and rewarding. Maya brought a new dimension to their lives, filling their days with laughter, wonder, and a sense of purpose. Thomas and Emma embraced their roles as parents with enthusiasm, learning and growing alongside their daughter. Thomas often reflected on his journey, from the pain of Catherine's betrayal to the profound happiness he now experienced with Emma and Maya. He had faced his darkest moments and emerged stronger, more resilient, and more appreciative of the love and joy in his life. One evening, as the family gathered for dinner, Thomas received an unexpected phone call. It was from Catherine. He hesitated for a moment before answering, unsure of what to expect. "Hello, Thomas," Catherine said, her voice tentative. "I hope it's okay that I'm calling. I just wanted to check in and see how you're doing." Thomas was taken aback by her sincerity. "I'm doing well, Catherine. Life has changed a lot since we last spoke. I heard about your marriage to Emma and your adoption of Maya," Catherine continued. "I wanted to say congratulations. I'm truly happy for you." "Thank you," Thomas replied, genuinely touched. "How have you been?" Catherine shared that she had moved to a new city and was focusing on her career and personal growth. She had also sought therapy to address her past mistakes and was working towards becoming a better person. "I wanted to apologize again for everything I put you through," Catherine said. "I've realized the impact of my actions and I'm deeply sorry for the pain I caused." Thomas listened, feeling a sense of closure. "I appreciate your apology, Catherine. We've both moved on, and I hope you find happiness and peace in your life." They ended the conversation on a positive note, and Thomas felt a weight lift off his shoulders. He had forgiven Catherine, not for her sake, but for his own. It was a final step in his healing process, allowing him to fully embrace the present and look forward to the future. As Thomas hung up the phone, he turned to Emma and Maya, feeling a profound sense of gratitude. He had learned that life was unpredictable, filled with both joy and sorrow. But through it all, he had discovered his own strength and the power of love and forgiveness. Later that night, as Thomas and Emma tucked Maya into bed, he whispered to his daughter, "You are our greatest blessing, Maya. We love you so much." Maya giggled, her eyes sparkling with happiness. "I love you too, Daddy. And Mommy." Thomas and Emma stood by the door, watching their daughter drift off to sleep. They held each other close, feeling the warmth of their love and the promise of a bright future. As they walked back to their room, Emma looked up at Thomas, her eyes filled with love. "We've come a long way, haven't we?" Thomas smiled, his heart full. "Yes, we have. And the best is yet to come." With Emma by his side and Maya in their hearts, Thomas knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, they would face them together. Their love had weathered the storms of life and emerged stronger, a beacon of hope and resilience. As they lay in bed, holding each other, Thomas whispered, "Thank you for everything, Emma. You've given me a second chance at happiness, and I will cherish it always." Emma smiled, her heart full of love. "And thank you, Thomas, for believing in us and for building this beautiful life together." As they drifted off to sleep, Thomas felt a profound sense of peace. His journey had been marked by pain and betrayal, but it had also led him to a place of true happiness and fulfillment. With Emma and Maya by his side, he was ready to face whatever the future held, knowing that their love would guide them through anything. The dawn of a new day was breaking, and with it came the promise of a bright and beautiful future. Thomas knew that the journey was far from over, but he was ready to embrace it with an open heart and a resilient spirit, surrounded by the love of his family. The end.
Subscribe to the channel. Have a nice day.